All right. So before we start, just want to quickly go over some housekeeping and then we'll talk about the agenda. You should have received an email either last night or this morning. In that email, there were, of course, information for the Zoom meeting that we're on today, but there were also resources that we've attached, resources from Calvet and also resources from Plowshare, which who they will be speaking today. Those resources from Calvet, that was the resource book. It was a PDF copy of the resource book. We also had the PDF of the link map, and then there was a PDF of how to use the chat for Resume. With the chat, we're going to use the questions that come in through the chat for the virtual questions and answers panel at the end. So any questions that you do have for the presenters, please feel free to direct them there. If there's something that we can answer right away, we'll try to do that. But if not, we'll just use them for the questions at the end. We have a pretty event-filled day today with two speakers, one from Plowshare and another from Veterans Legal Institute. And they're going to talk about how the discharge upgrade process works and how they can help veterans reach those goals. So this is just what you saw in your email. This is the instructions for the chat. Like I said, please utilize this. If you have questions for any one of the presenters, we will be using these at the end for the questions and answers panel. All right, so my name is Michael Cisneros. I am a training coordinator with Calvet. I'm also a veteran. I actually separated from the Air Force back in 2007, and then I went right back to school in 2008. So I've been a student for a long time. I got this job probably about a year ago. And while I was in school, I did a lot of my research on the veteran community. So this job that I'm at right now is pretty rewarding. I'm happy that I'm helping out veterans in a different way, in a way that I wasn't helped out, or a way that I didn't get when I separated back in 2007. So what I'll do right now is just give you a quick overview of the CalTAP program and how we assist veterans in California. So what is CalTAP? Well, CalTAP is designed to inform and connect veterans of all eras to the earned state and federal benefits, as well as provide continuous support as their needs change over time. And so what we've done is we've developed 4 different pathways that help veterans navigate those benefits. Those pathways are entrepreneurship pathway, there's an employment pathway, we have an education pathway, and then there's a general core curriculum of benefits that don't fit into those topics that I just announced. We do have a service provider pathway, the 5th pathway. We don't talk about that much, but if you do have anybody in your community or know anybody who wants to work with veterans specifically, feel free to send them to our website. They can find out more information about some of the programs that we do have. This is what that veteran resource book looks like. Like I said, you received a link to the PDF copy. If this was an in-person webinar, you would have a physical copy sitting in front of you right now. However, due to circumstances, we're just sending individuals to our website, or we're sending them out through email. This book is gold for veterans. Everything regarding California benefits that I talk about today can be found in this book, along with greater detail about how to get those processes started and eligibility requirements. You can find out information on our website at calvet.ca.gov. If you look in the middle of the screen on the homepage, you'll find the CalTAP banner, and you can click on that to find out more information about our program. Now, before I go on, I just want to do a quick little plug and tell you about some of the things that we've been doing over the last, 9 months now. Since we started doing these webinars, we've actually put on a few, more than a few, with a range of topics. And so we've recorded them and we've put them on our website. So feel free to go to our CalTAP page. When you go to that CalTAP page, you'll find the archives link at the bottom that's circled right there. And when you click on that, you're taken to a page with all of our past webinars. And like I said, we've done webinars with Plowshare in the past. We have webinars on financial literacy, webinars on suicide prevention, mental health. So we've done a lot over the past couple months, and we'll continue doing them, and we'll continue posting them here. So if you want to check out some of the other things, just jump on our website and view those recordings. And there's also the PDF copies of the PowerPoints that we've attached to. All right, so how do I use CalTAP online? Well, if you go to our website, calvet.ca.gov, you click on that CalTAP banner, you're taken to our pathways page. Like I said, you find the education, employment, entrepreneurship pathway all right there. For this example, I'll click on the core curriculum pathway, show you what that's all about. Core curriculum pathway is going to give you lessons or modules on a bunch of different things, like the VA healthcare, claims and compensation. I think there's one on financial literacy down at the bottom. But if you're just curious about what the California benefits are that are available to you as a California veteran, you'll click on Module 5. Module 5 will break that down for you. So this is just a PDF of that you can actually download in that module. And this PDF is specifically talking about the college tuition fee waiver for veteran dependents, which I'll actually talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So what are those benefits? Well, check out your resource book. Chapter 1, page 13 starts the chapter on California benefits. And then you can also download that PDF, which I mentioned earlier. But some of those benefits, one of the most popular benefits that we get a lot of questions on is the college tuition and fee waiver for veterans dependents, child dependents. And so what this does is it waives tuition and fees at all state-funded schools, so any UC, CSU, or California Community College. And it's strictly for, well, it's for child dependents, and it's based off of their income level. And the veteran does need a disability rating between 0 and 100. So with this particular benefit, there are 4 different plans. We do see most of our veterans fall under Plan B, and this is because this is a plan that does require that disability rating between 0 and 100, and because it is a broad spectrum, it's a pretty easy benefit to get. With the Plan B, it is only for child dependents. However, if you do have a spouse that wants to use this benefit, there is a way. You would just have to see if you're eligible for Plan A, Plan C, or Plan D. If you are eligible for any one of those plans, then you may be able to split your benefit with your child and your spouse, or either or. And this benefit saves veterans over $35 million a year in tuition and fees. So, if you think about it this way, you as a veteran are eligible for the GI Bill, and this benefit is for your spouse or your children. That means that you don't have to spend money on tuition and fees for them either. So it's a really good benefit, popular with our veteran community. We've also partnered with the DMV to make it easier for individuals to identify as veterans. So now we have the Veteran Driver's License Program, which allows you to get the word veteran printed on your ID. And so this is just so that you don't have to walk around carrying a DD Form 214 in your back pocket anymore. That's sensitive information like your socials on it. I'm sure it's not something that you'd want to have hanging around. And then we also have the Honoring Veterans License Plate Program. This is for anybody in California. You don't have to necessarily be a veteran, but this is that program where, if you're driving around on the street and you see a license plate with the Air Force logo on it, or some kind of medal that is given for military service. This is what that program is all about. All proceeds go to veteran services in California. So this is how like the CVSOs in your area get funded. And then there's also the motor vehicle registration fee waiver, which we don't talk about too much, but it is there. If you think that you may be eligible for it, I would definitely recommend talking with your local county veteran service office. All right, and then for those of you who want to be outdoors, we do have a fishing and hunting license that's offered at a reduced annual cost. With this benefit, you do have to be 50% or more, you do have to have a 50% or more service-related disability, and you must have also been discharged with the honorable discharge. With the state park pass, it's the same thing, honorable discharge, at least 50% disability rating. With the state park pass, it was just for California. You had to be a resident of California to utilize this benefit. However, I believe after Veterans Day of this year, they switched it to any state park pass within the country. So I would definitely just talk with your county veteran service office just to get a little bit more detail about what the changes are for that program. Tax programs, we don't talk about tax programs much, but we do have them for veterans who want to open their own business or have a disability rating, an extreme disability rating. We don't talk about tax programs much just because it's different in the areas of California. So what we recommend is the veteran talking or speaking with their local county tax assessor. All right, and we have a home loans program. Our home loans program is different than the federal VA home loans program. The calvet home loans program provides financing for veterans, competitive market rates, and it offers low or no down payment requirement, or there's no or low down payment requirements. We have somebody who usually speaks on these things with us. His name is Brad Pedersen. He's our home loans guru. If you guys, or if anybody's interested or is in looking for a house right now, we could definitely put his contact information in the chat. I would definitely recommend reaching out to him if you are in the market. He loves doing what he's doing, he loves helping out veterans, and he's really good at it too. All right, and for our women veterans, we have a program that provides information, advocacy, outreach, and support. This program is also partnered with the California Women Veterans Leadership Council. It just gives more opportunities for our women veterans here in California. And more information about their program can be found on our website under the Women Veterans webpage. And they also have a roster. So if you are interested in some of the events coming up or the webinars that they are hosting, feel free to sign up under the roster. You can continue getting those newsletters from them. For our minority veterans, we have another program that provides information, advocacy, and support. And we've also helped with naturalization and citizenship services. And their webpage can be found under the minority and underrepresented veterans section. All right, homes for long-term care. You might not be looking for this right now, or maybe you have somebody in your community who might need these kind of services, but we do have 8 different homes for long-term care here in California, all the way down in Chula Vista to Redding up north. These homes offer medical, dental, rehabilitation services, and also social activities. And the same for our state cemeteries. You might not be thinking about a state right now, but if you do have anybody in your family or anybody in your community who might be needing these services, and they are a veteran, there are 3 different cemeteries in California. One in Seaside, California, which is right outside of Monterey. There's another one in Redding. And then there's also the Yountville Veterans Home Cemetery, which is right outside of Napa. For this cemetery, you do have to be a resident of the Yountville's veteran home to be buried there. So if that's not your situation, then you do have those other 2 to look forward to. There is a 4th one being in the works right now. I'm not sure how far along it is, but that's going to be in Southern California. And I'm not sure if they actually have a location for it just yet, but just be advised, there will be a 4th one coming in the future. All right, and so before I pass it on, I'm going to quickly talk to you about some common veteran websites that you as a veteran should be familiar with here in California. The first one is va.gov. This is kind of like I like to think of it as like a hub for veterans. If you're interested in the VA healthcare system, you're trying to file a disability claim, you want to check out your records, or you just want to take advantage of education benefits, this website will direct you to the websites you need to go to get those processes started or to check up on them. There's also e-benefits. This is a good one if you are taking advantage of like disability claims or education benefits or any kind of benefits. This is where you'll go to see what's going on with the process, right? So I know when I was a student, I was looking on this website every semester just to see if they certified my classes. Every month I would check it out to see if they sent out my living allowance. And so this is where you'll get that information from. And then finally, there's My Healthy Vet. My Healthy Vet is for individuals who are taking advantage of the VA healthcare system. This is where you'll go to set appointments up with your primary care physician. You could refill prescriptions, check out your health records, and also communicate with your doctor too. All right, so that's just a quick overview of the CalTAP program. There's other benefits out there available to you, If you have any questions about what those are, feel free to email me or just give that 1-800 number a call. We can direct you to the services that are needed for you. But now I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Merlene. Merlene Steinbeck is our local interagency network coordinator. She is going to explain how they assist veterans here in California. So go ahead, Merlene.
Thank you so much. So one of the greatest things that I think California does, which I'm not sure that every state does this, but we have representatives in different sections of California that not only interface with all of the departments that Michael was just talking about, but we also interface with nonprofits as well. Go ahead, next slide. And so I wanted to look at our regions here. And as you can tell, these regions are very diverse. My area is the big red area. So like half the state, but I'm just joking. But like Northern California is going to have very different needs than the people here in the Inland Empire. And the same goes as well for Orange County is going to have different needs than LA or San Diego. And I like to say we have micro subcultures, and each representative here, they're such great people. They're good at their jobs and they interface directly with so many different agencies that no matter what kind of thing a veteran is facing, we should be able to assist them and direct them to somebody that can help them with that particular situation. In fact, I had a veteran call the other day that said, hey, I need a new washer and dryer. And the lady was like, I don't think you guys can help. And I said, yeah, actually, we have something called Heroes Warehouse over in Rancho Cucamonga. They moved from Fontana, and I'll hook you up with them. And she's like, really? It's just amazing at the different levels that we will go to help the veterans. Next slide. So we do provide outreach to service members, veterans, and their families. We're here today. We are on basis in different subject matters. You will find a link in so many different places. If you have a natural disaster, such as an earthquake or a fire or some other type of situation that requires a local assistance center, you will find a link there, local interagency network coordinator. And we can get you directly to the services. Most of the time we could just pick up a phone call and call homeless services or call so many different people that could help you. We also provide leadership and advocacy to the local community. We are usually in the know. We know all of the agencies. We know the people to talk to. And we can usually just pick up the phone and make a phone call. We work directly with the established service providers in our networks. And if you have a service that is valuable to the veterans, it's good to connect with us, because we can also provide services to you. So next slide. So we have connections in each of the California state agencies as well. For example, a lot of times the veteran doesn't want just disability or unemployment, they want a job and they're willing to work. And so we have EDD contacts in all of our regions at the American Job Centers. But we can also get them on board with the unemployment as well. We have contacts in each of the county veteran service offices and at CalVet and at the VA medical centers and the vet centers. So I literally got a call one day from the local crisis center, and they had a veteran was able to get a hold of somebody in a vet center who came pick them up, took them down, and got them squared away. So these kinds of things, it doesn't matter what the situation is, the links are able to roll with it. We're subject matter experts in federal, in state, and county, so we can get you directly connected with the benefits that they earn. Next slide. This is my contact information. Feel free to text me, feel free to email me. These, or call me, although I may be in a Zoom meeting and may send you to voicemail, but if you do text or call, I'm usually able to respond right away and very quickly. Usually I get responses out within 24 to 48 hours. You will get one, if not within the hour. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me and I will get you connected with the benefits that you earned.
All right. Thank you, Merlene. Appreciate that. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Swords to Plowshare. Swords to Plowshares. Holly Christian is going to talk about how they assist veterans in the discharge upgrade process. Go ahead, Holly.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks everyone for joining this presentation. I know that military discharge upgrades and getting connected to VA benefits and getting military records corrections can really be an intimidating and long process. And so hopefully today, myself and Doug from the Veterans Legal Institute will be able to kind of debunk that fear and kind of walk you through the process a little bit. I will say that due to time and because this is such a complex subject that we're not able to get through all of the material that you would need to know on a military discharge upgrade, but there are many resources that I'm linking to in my presentation, and that will be in the Zoom chat where you can go on and do your own research and learn more about this subject. So I guess I should introduce myself before I start, but my name is Holly Christian, of course, and I am the pro bono manager and staff attorney at Swords to Plowshares. And if we move on to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about Swords. So Swords to Plowshares is a nonprofit, and we serve over 3,000 homeless and at-risk veterans in the Bay Area per year. We provide not only our legal services, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but we provide a wide variety of services to Bay Area veterans, and that includes housing, both permanent, supportive, and emergency housing. We have case management and caseworkers. We have employment and training programs and services. We have a policy branch, which really advocates for veterans on a larger scale. And then, of course, we have our legal services unit. And I should say my favorite fact about Swords is that we were founded in the 1970s by a group of Vietnam era veterans who came back and really saw this gap in services as well as this need in the veteran population. And our executive director, Michael Blecker, we have a black and white photo of him in the 70s holding up a Swords to Plowshares sign. He is a Vietnam era veteran. And so really I am not a veteran, but we have many veterans working within our program. And so we like to say that we are veterans serving veterans. And so I'll talk a little bit more about our legal services on the next slide here. So legal services sounds like a very broad topic. However, within Swords to Plowshares, we only focus on VA benefits and military discharge upgrades. So if you need assistance with like housing, eviction, family law, things like child custody or divorce, any kind of other legal issue, you'll want to seek outside resources and not necessarily Swords to Plowshares. So we really focus on getting veterans connected to those VA benefits and services like service-connected disability compensation. So if you were injured in the military and you are still experiencing that condition today, as well as pension if you are over a certain age and you served during the wartime. There's multiple eligibility factors there, but we can also get you hooked up with VA healthcare. And I'll talk a little bit more about this last bullet point, the character of discharge determination. That helps determine your eligibility for VA healthcare, which is a separate process from the military discharge upgrade. And then, of course, the reason why we're here today, we also assist with military discharge upgrades, and that includes changing a variety of things on your DD-214 and getting your records corrected. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I also just wanted to point out here that we do assist veterans with corrections under the Don't Ask, Don't Tell and other previous policies that were homophobic that have now been repealed. So if you were discharged under that, under Don't Ask, Don't Tell or any of those policies, or if you identify as transgender and you would like to seek a name correction, we help and assist with those military records corrections also. And so I'll talk about who is eligible for our legal services on the next slide. So all San Francisco and Bay Area veterans are eligible for a free one-time consultation. Before we were doing it in person on every Tuesday morning, but now of course we are doing it on the phone. Unfortunately, we cannot assist veterans outside of those 5 counties in the Bay Area. But if you do need other resources, I have a list of advocates coming up that can also assist you. And we do not only provide that one-time consultation and self-help, but we provide full attorney representation in VA benefits and military discharge upgrades on a case-by-case basis, depending on our capacity. And I will say that for full attorney representation, we really try to prioritize those services for homeless veterans living in San Francisco and veterans with mental health conditions who are at risk. And so if we move on to the next slide here. So if you're thinking, I'm not in the Bay Area, how do I get help? Or, if you're looking for someone outside of Swords to Plowshares, we have Veterans Legal Institute, of course, coming up next. I'll let Doug speak to their program, but there's a link there. And then there's also a variety of national programs like National Veterans Legal Services Program, or NVLSP. They are such powerhouses in doing this kind of work with discharge upgrades and VA benefits. And so I would highly suggest looking to them. They have both information and resources, as well as attorneys in-house and pro bono attorney volunteers that can assist veterans. There's also the Veterans Consortium, which is a list of attorney volunteers that do this work pro bono. And then, of course, you also might want to look at, if you're near a law school, sometimes law schools have veterans clinics where law students and legal professionals and professors will assist veterans with this type of work. And so that link actually just shows a list of those members. And just to say that I'm not 100% sure of all of the eligibility requirements for these different advocates. So you'll want to do that research on your own and reach out to them, but just wanted to list some more resources here. Now, if you would like some more advice on self-help, on the next slide, we have a variety of resources too. So of course, I've got to plug my organization, Swords to Plowshares. We have these amazing self-help guides on our website under resources. And not only do we have a discharge upgrade self-help guide and a VA character of discharge determination self-help guide, we have a list of different issues that you might face when trying to access benefits or change your military records corrections. And doing that. So we have things like how to request your records, working with government agencies, how to write a PTSD stressor statement. And then we also have a guide for your friends and family that might be writing letters to support your discharge upgrade or your service connection claim too. So definitely there's a lot of different subject matters covered on our self-help guides. So even if you're looking for something outside of help with your records corrections, look on there. The VA also has a discharge upgrade tool in which you can essentially put in different kind of circumstances and facts surrounding your case. And they will then compute, these are the different steps you need to take. This is the board you need to apply to, things like that. It's really helpful. And then, of course, also plugging CalVets. We have worked with CalVet to produce a learning module. I believe it's learning module 7. And that covers both discharge upgrades and VA service connection, that character of discharge determination process. And it is under the Fixing Bad Papers learning module. And so that is a much more in-depth review of these subject matters. And so if we move on to the next slide, this is our Swords contact information. I just really quickly wanted to point out that first number, 415-727-VETS, if you're inquiring about any of our services, whether it be legal, housing, employment, and training, that's really the best kind of centralized intake line to call. You can also contact us through like a contact form online if you feel more comfortable doing that, and that's at swordstoplowshares.org/contact. And then we do have service centers both in downtown San Francisco and in Oakland. And so, the Oakland Service Center is by appointment only, but our San Francisco Service Center has drop-in hours. So let's get to the next slide, which is our substantive information. So What is a discharge upgrade? The big question. Hopefully, this isn't the first time you're hearing about a discharge upgrade, but if it is, let's just go through the basics. A discharge upgrade, or a DU, I might say that later on, it changes the actual character of service that's shown on that DD 214 discharge certificate. So that piece of paper that you received when you left the military, we're asking to change information on this piece of paper. So not only can you change that character of service, so honorable, general, other than honorable, those different categories, but you can change the narrative reason for separation. So if your narrative reason for separation says misconduct, serious offense, or in lieu of court-martial, or narrative reason is homosexual misconduct, things like that, you can ask for those things to be changed, as well as your re-entry code. And the reason why you might want to do that is because it really wipes all of that indication of misconduct from your DD 214. And that results in the actual military record being changed, so that if, obviously getting a discharge upgrade would allow some veterans to access VA services, and that might be the motivation. But a lot of veterans also, it's a restorative justice issue. And to have that piece of paperwork reflect that you served honorably and not have any kind of biasing or negative language on the DD 214, not only is that a sense of personal justice and restorative justice, but it can also help in employment settings where you have to present that DD 214 to have that kind of all wiped free of any indication of misconduct. So I also wanted to briefly on the next slide mention the VA character of discharge determination, because there is a lot of, honestly, there's some bad information out there about character of discharge determinations. You might have been told by another veteran, by a VA employee even, by your chain of command that you're not eligible for VA services and the only way to get VA services is through a discharge upgrade. Well, actually, in many cases, that's just not true. You can go through this VA character of discharge determination process. And so that is a process in which the VA will be allowed to grant you eligibility for most benefits aside from the GI Bill. The GI Bill requires an honorable discharge character of discharge. So if you're looking for the GI Bill, then a discharge upgrade would be more appropriate. But as far as like VA service connection, pension, home loan, all of those VA services and benefits, including healthcare, if you are successful in this process, you might be eligible for those services. It can be quicker than a discharge upgrade, in fact, and it doesn't actually change what's on your DD 214. So this is the VA. They don't have authority or jurisdiction over the Department of Defense to change your records. But like I said, it can be really beneficial in getting you access and getting you into the door at the VA. So please don't be discouraged if a VA employee or if anyone else told you that you can only get services if you have a discharge upgrade or you're just not eligible. A lot of people don't understand and don't know about this process. And we actually typically advise that you apply for both of these, both the discharge upgrade and the VA character of discharge determination at the same time. It won't hurt if you apply for both at the same time. And in fact, if you get a positive character of discharge determination from the VA, that can help you in your discharge upgrade, because you're saying to the Department of Defense, hey, the VA found my service honorable, so why don't you too? And so that can be really persuasive to the boards, and we encourage you to apply for both. If you haven't already applied for a VA benefit and you have one of these characters of service that falls in that yellow or red category, essentially if you have an other than honorable or undesirable, bad conduct, or dishonorable, the VA will kind of automatically assume that you are ineligible. But once you apply for a VA benefit, whether it be a home loan, healthcare, VA service connection, pension, things like that, they should initiate this character of discharge determination process. And so I don't want to get too into it because, of course, this webinar is supposed to be about discharge upgrades, but we do have and CalTAP actually just linked our self-help guide in the Zoom chat, but that walks you through the process of how to ask for one. It's important too to know that there are limitations on this character of discharge determination. If you have an OTH other than honorable discharge, and it's because you went AWOL for 180 days, or because it was like in lieu of general court martial, or because or if you have like a bad conduct because of a general court martial, there are certain factors where the VA's hands are kind of tied. But if, for instance, you smoked marijuana once and you received an other than honorable discharge because of that, the VA is more likely to find you eligible for benefits and services because they recognize that, hey, that shouldn't really bar you from benefits for the rest of your life. And so we'll move on to the next slide here. So let's actually get into the military discharge review. So there are two venues that you can go to. One is the Discharge Review Board, and one is the Board for Corrections of Military or Naval Records. So the Air Force, Army, and Coast Guard, I believe, share one board, and then the Navy and the Marine Corps share a different board. And that's true of both the Discharge Review Board and the Board for Corrections of Military or Naval Records. And so you might see it written as NDRB, that means Navy Discharge Review Board, or you might see BCMR, which is that Air Force and Army, and N, which means Navy and Marine Corps. And so we'll go through and talk about those two different boards. And so at the end of my presentation, I'm going to hand it off to Doug, and he's going to go into the actual application process. So really here, I just want to set you guys up with some information about the boards in general. And the actual specifics of the application and what the boards are looking for when you apply will be covered by Doug. And so if we move on to the next slide here, we'll talk about the discharge review boards. If it is within 15 years of the date of your discharge, then you'll probably want to go to the Discharge Review Board. They have more limited authority. They cannot change certain things, like they can't change your narrative reason for discharge to or from disability. That the other board can do, but this board cannot do that. And there's more certain circumstances that you can look at, but essentially, if you're looking for something like a change in your character of discharge or narrative reason, then you can ask the Discharge Review Board if you were within that 15-year timeline. With this board, there are 3 different standards of review. If you were court-martialed, you can only ask for discharge upgrade on the basis of clemency. Now, if you were court-martialed and you were acquitted, or you were court-martialed earlier in your career and then you were discharged later for something else, that's a different circumstance. But if you were court-martialed and the reason and the outcome of that court-martial was a discharge, a punitive discharge, then you'll have to ask for clemency. Equity and propriety are 2 of the standards that the boards look at. I generally advise to use the equity argument, and Doug will cover more on kind of how you would ask for that equity argument. Propriety is a little bit harder to prove because there you're really trying to say that the military kind of broke its own laws. And so in order to prove propriety or impropriety of your discharge, you would have to point out to a specific policy, Department of Defense instruction, law, or regulation that the military broke, and then how they broke that law. So the form that you would use here is a DD form 293. You should be able to find that we have a link to it within our discharge upgrade self-help guide, which is in the chat. Or you can probably Google it and find it on the various Department of Defense branches, the military branches websites. As far as the types of review that you can do, you can ask for a record review, which is where the board looks at, hey, I'm looking at your military record and your application, and it's all the papers, essentially. They're going to look at all of those documents, at your military records, your service treatment records, and then whatever you provide them with, your personal statement, et cetera. Anything that's written. Now, you can also opt for an in-person hearing, and most of the boards, either you would have to travel to Washington, D.C. on your own budget, or you can go to a traveling board, or now, like the Navy Discharge Review Board is opting and having the option of telephonic hearings, which is great because that accesses and allows a lot more veterans to access that in-person hearing. Now, what's important to note is that although the in-person hearings have a higher chance of success, the reason why you might want to choose a record review instead is because if you choose a record review and you are denied for some reason, you can then opt in and ask for an in-person hearing. But if you go straight to the in-person hearing, you cannot then ask for a record review. So if you ask for the record review, you kind of get two chances because you get the record review and the personal hearing. So we usually advise that you try for the record review first, because then you get 2 bites of the apple at this board versus just 1 shot at the hearing. And we will move on to the boards for corrections of military records here. So they have a kind of strange movable target statute of limitations here, or timeline. They say that you have to apply within 3 years from the date on which you discovered the error or injustice. In some instances, that can mean if you're denied at the Discharge Review Board, you have 3 years from that denial to then appeal or request for a correction with this board, the BCMR. However, it's a very easily waivable 3-year timeline. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I was discharged 20, 25 years ago and I never applied for the Discharge Review Board, like my only option is the BCMR, how am I going to get them to hear my case? You know, I don't fit in within the 15-year timeline and I don't fit in within the 3-year timeline. You can easily waive this 3-year timeline by using the magic words, which is, I ask that the board hear my case in the interest of justice. And you want to say that, you know, you're asking for a waiver. So I ask that the board waive the 3-year timeline because it is in the interest of justice to hear my application or to hear my case. And they have 3 standards of review that are equivalent to the Discharge Review Board. So their injustice standard is equivalent and equal to the equity argument, and same for error and propriety, and then clemency is the same thing. It's just, you know, this is the military. They like to make things a little bit more difficult and use different words. So just be aware that those standards of reviews might use different terminology, and just be sure that you're using their language when you're applying to whichever board you're applying to. Like I mentioned earlier, this board has broader authority than the Discharge Review Board, so they can change things like your, a narrative reason changed to or from disability, things like that. They use a form 149, and like I said, you can access that online or through our Discharge Upgrade self-help guide. And they also have 2 types of review. However, it's important to note that if this is the board that you're applying to, it is extremely rare. I cannot think of a case in which they granted a personal appearance hearing. So really here, you are looking for a documentary review. So you want to put as much argument as you can written down in that application, because it is very rare to get a personal appearance hearing, and you don't really have a right to a hearing like you do at the Discharge Review Board. It's also important to note that if you're within the 15-year timeline, you can't go straight to this board. You have to do what's called exhausting your administrative remedies, which means that you have to go through the DRB and go through the record review hearing, or sorry, the record review, and then the in-person hearing before you get to the BCMR. If you're within that 15-year timeline. If you're outside of that 15-year timeline, you can go straight to the BCMR. You can also go straight to the BCMR if you're asking them to make a correction, which the Discharge Review Board does not have authority to do. Other than that, I think we'll move on to the next slide here. And I just wanted to briefly go over, I have listed on this slide the various forms and then certain things that you might want to include in your application, but I will really leave that up to Doug to go through, you know, what the boards are looking at. But hopefully that gives you more so a procedural overview of what's going on at the boards. And I know I threw a lot at you all, but really, the Discharge Upgrade Self-Help Guide that I know I keep mentioning it, but it'll really help you determine what board to go to, what to include in your application, where to send your paperwork, all of those things. So I hope that that was helpful. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Doug. And I also have some considerations on that slide, but please feel free to reach out to Swords to Plowshares if you are in the Bay Area. I would highly suggest also reaching out to a different advocate if you are unable to be assisted through VLI or Swords to Plowshares. And thank you all so much. And I honestly, I wish you all the best of luck in your discharge upgrade applications. So I'll turn it over to Doug. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Holly. Before Doug starts, I just want to say the links that, or the resources that Holly was offering in her slides, those were also attached to the emails that were sent out last night and this morning. So along with, I believe Jen was inserting them into the chat. You should have also seen them in your emails. And then also just to let you know, this webinar is being recorded. And we are also going to post the PDF PowerPoint along with it. So if you are looking for those resources, there's another avenue that you can find them. So now I'll go ahead and pass it on to Doug. Doug is from the Veterans Legal Institute, and he is going to explain how they assist veterans in that discharge upgrade process. So go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, Holly, for a great presentation. There's a lot of information. I will try not to repeat too much of it. Our presentations overlap slightly. Your heads are probably hurting already from all the information. We're gonna have to skip through this stuff fairly quickly in the interest of time. There are plenty of resources. The Swords to Plowshares self-help guide is a gold standard. It is an awesome resource. That's a great starting point. Holly mentioned some other resources, and there are a number of external resources that you can reach out to. So with that, I'm going to jump into this and try and spin through some of the introductory stuff. I'm a senior staff attorney at Veterans Legal Institute. We do discharge upgrades. We do more than discharge upgrades as well. So can I get the next slide? So Veterans Legal Institute is a nonprofit law firm. We provide free legal assistance to homeless, at-risk, disabled, and low-income current and former service members to eradicate barriers to housing, healthcare, education, and employment, and foster self-sufficiency. We're located in the Tierney Center for Veterans Services in Tustin, California. That's in Orange County. We service Orange County, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties directly and through a network of volunteer lawyers and law school clinics. We serve veterans benefits, discharge upgrades, housing, family law, consumer law and bankruptcy, and estate planning. You can access our services, request assistance at www.vetslegal.org. It also works if you go to vetslegal.com, and there's a button for apply now. And there's an online application process. If you have questions or you want real help with your matter, you'll get a response from us. Next slide, please. So currently, with respect to discharge upgrades, we're doing a lot of informing and educating veterans about their rights and available resources as the law has changed and continues to change. We're informing, recruiting, and training attorneys to assist veterans on a pro bono basis. And that's really important because the volume of work, there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of veterans who may be eligible for discharge upgrades. We're working with law school clinics and law students to assist the veterans. And our core representation, our core mission at VLI is to represent veterans with a need for a discharge upgrade or a character of discharge determination for VA purposes impacted by PTSD, TBI, military sexual trauma, including harassment, or discrimination, including don't ask, don't tell, the kind of the core focus. And part of that is because of the change in the law and guidance. We continue to advocate for changes in the law, regulations, and guidance. And one of those areas, the character of discharge determination, the VA, under pressure from a number of advocacy groups, including Swords to Plowshares and NVLSP that you heard about, are considering they are updating their regulations for the first time since just post World War II in a direction that is more favorable to veterans in terms of definitions of some of the regulatory standards, but not everything that advocacy groups want. Maybe we'll have some more luck in the next 4 years. So next. So what we're here to talk about today, many thousands of veterans are locked out of the VA and face obstacles to employment and other consequences from the bad paper discharges. Due to changes in the law and the guidance, which now requires liberal consideration of the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and military sexual trauma, thousands of veterans separated with bad paper for misconduct are eligible for upgrades of their discharge because they were excused, because their conduct is excused or mitigated by the PTSD, TBI, or MST suffered while in service to the nation. It's good news. It's not easy, but it's there are changes that we'll dig into just a little bit. So let's skip to the next slide. So Holly covered what a discharge upgrade is. It's a permanent change to your military record, and that distinguishes it from the character of discharge determination, which can be made by the VA only for VA purposes, for VA benefits. An actual discharge upgrade changes your characterization of service. Your actual military records get changed, and that is binding on the VA. So it's more powerful. And there are different tests between the VA and the military service discharge upgrade. Okay, next. You make so you make the two distinctions also are that the character of discharge determination is made by the VA for VA purposes, as I said. The discharge upgrade determination is made by application to the military service branch that the veteran served in, and that's either a discharge review board, if within 15 years of the discharge, or to the Board for Correction of Military Records, Board for Correction of Naval Records, if the 15 years have passed. So you have to actually go to the, if you're within the, if you're not asking for relief outside the scope of what the Discharge Review Board can grant, you must go to the Discharge Review Board first if you're within the first 15 years. And you'd want to anyway, even though there's a lower granting rate or lower rate of success at discharge review boards. It gives you an extra bite at the apple. And as Holly mentioned, if you do a personal hearing, you may get 2 bites at the discharge review board and then still be able to get to the Board for Correction of Military Records. That 15 years is a hard stop. That's a hard line. So 15 years from your discharge. Next. And this sort of, I'll just really briefly go through this, and you can go back and look at it. Discharge review boards are staffed by usually active duty officers, and boards for correction of military records or naval records are civilian employees of the service branch. So you have a little bit of a harder line, usually in terms of the interpretation of the rules and regulations and the propriety of their enforcement and implementation at the discharge review board, because you're dealing with active duty officers who are living in that world. There's a presumption of regularity as to all administrative actions in the veteran's separation. So the veteran has a significant burden of proof to establish an actual breach of regulations. So there's the two parts: the equity or propriety at the discharge review board level, or the error or injustice at the BCMR, BCNR level. Those are the standards. And the equity or injustice are the softer standards that you're going to want to argue really hard and put your best foot forward in personal statements, and the rest will get right to that. So next. So along with what I was saying, the discharge review boards grant fewer than 20% of discharge upgrades. It's actually usually in the teens, and as opposed to the BCNR, BCMRs are somewhere typically in the 40 percentile kind of range. They're reporting as of now that the most current year that they've reported for is 2018. And only with fighting from advocacy groups for veterans did they start disclosing the approval rates. They were kind of hiding that ball from the veteran community, and now we get to see it, although it's significantly in the rearview mirror. So what do we learn from that? Prepare your discharge upgrade application thoroughly and try to do it the right way the first time, using the resources that you have available to you. Next. A discharge upgrade application typically wants to set forth the faithful service of the applicant prior to the events resulting in disciplinary separation, the facts or events excusing or mitigating the conduct that resulted in separation, the errors or injustice by the military service that resulted in the separation, despite the facts or events that mitigate or excuse the misconduct, and any diagnosis supporting the applicant's contentions, if you have an in-service or post-service VA or private medical diagnosis, and we'll get into a little bit more of that. Post-service, positive character evidence, what you've done since the military, and if appropriate, struggles due to the uncorrected bad paper discharge. That's kind of the general formula. Obviously, it's case by case. You want to build what you have, your strongest aspects, and make your case. Next. Specifically, a discharge upgrade application needs to include that cover form, and Holly discussed that. Your DD 214 also needs to be in there. And then we suggest a cover letter with a summary of the argument. The boards are very busy and they take a long time. And my operating assumption is I'm going to get somebody to read through it one time. So you want to make sure it reads well, it's thorough, and it tells a good story. So you need a detailed brief if you're doing it right. Veteran doing it for themselves, the focus should be truly on a personal statement, buddy statements from in-service and post-service, telling how you served with honor. If anybody was around for an event, we've had IED explosions and had witnesses to that. If you have service treatment records, so those are the service records of where you served, how you served, awards and commendations. Those are all important service treatment records for that show evidence, even if not a full diagnosis. And then copies of relevant medical records, not only in service, but at post-service. Even if you're not eligible for VA disability benefits, you are eligible for VA mental health screening and the VA has gotten in trouble for sending veterans away. If you have an OTH, they should not be sending you away. And as Holly suggested, you may be wanting to submit a claim with the VA and put them to the test. Meanwhile, you're getting treatment and counseling if you're suffering from PTSD or TBI or other mental health issues that that came up during your service. If you have a private diagnosis for a mental health condition that supports your application, that's also should be submitted. So we always want to focus on the timeline of major events. One of the things I've seen from veterans preparing their own personal statements is they tell the story, but it's hard to tell. It's kind of stream of consciousness rather than organized by date. If you can get it organized and include dates, it's really helpful, even if they're approximate. Again, you're asking somebody to pay attention to your important story. It's important to try to tell it in a clear way. And evidence of positive character post-service, during service, you're a great service member, you're doing everything great, something happened, and you wound up getting separated for it. There's a reason for it, and then your post-service, you've done all these things, family, church, community, volunteer work, all that stuff is helpful. Next. This is where the law has changed since 2014. The Department of Defense, under a lot of pressure from advocacy groups and Congress, has increasingly recognized the disproportionate barriers faced by veterans with invisible wounds of service-connected mental health conditions who are seeking a discharge upgrade. And there are several guidance memos that you can read more about in the Swords to Plowshares self-help guide. It's a really good summary of what those provide, and have links to the actual memos. They're documents, they're short documents that have specific guidance from the Department of Defense to the discharge to the military boards for how they're supposed to consider applications for discharge upgrades where mental health conditions are a contributing factor. And the big picture is that those applications are entitled to priority treatment and liberal consideration in favor of the veteran. And the first of these was actually the Hagel Memorandum. He's Under Secretary of Defense or Acting Secretary of Defense. Next slide. The most important of the guidance memos is the CURTA memorandum that was issued in August of 2017. I should mention that if you had a discharge upgrade application denied before the Hagel memo came out in 2014, and you haven't made an application since, you're entitled to a fresh review. You can submit an discharge upgrade application. Unfortunately, it doesn't get you back to the 15-year statutory timeframe for the discharge review boards, but you can go to the Board for Correction of Military Records or Naval Records. The CURTA memo says that the board should consider, and we say that that your application should raise and answer each of the 4 CURTA questions. Did the veteran have a condition or experience that may excuse or mitigate the discharge? Did that condition exist or experience occur during military service? Does that condition or experience actually excuse or mitigate the discharge? And does the condition or experience outweigh the discharge? And those, there's actually some guidance or color on what information they're looking for within the CURTA memo. So it's well within the reach of many veterans to be able to put together this information. You don't have to be a lawyer to know your story and to be able to raise and answer these questions. Next slide. There's some specific provisions, and I'm just going to hit it really quickly. You can come back to this as more of a resource, but there are special provisions that the discharge review boards, and then the next slide will wind up being the boards for correction of military records and naval records for claims that relate to PTSD, TBI, related to combat, or to MST. And they have to have, the board has to either have specialists on the panel or refer and seek an opinion, which if there's a medical advisory opinion, the veteran should have the right to respond. That should be shared with the veteran, and you should have 30 or 60 days to respond to that. It really depends on the branch whether they're willing to work with you to give you longer than 30 days, but you usually get a 30-day called 30-day rebuttal letters, and you get to look at the opinion. So it's kind of important stuff. If you have the opportunity to look at what they're going to be basing their decision on, or recommendation from an expert, you definitely want to respond. Even if it's a favorable recommendation, respond and say, yes, and this is exactly why I should get the upgrade. And next slide. And this special provisions, as I said, the boards have also have special provisions, and this is all in support of the notion of liberal consideration of the evidence that's presented. It's not like being in court where technical rules of evidence have to be observed. And if you have evidence of a mental health issue, even the veteran's own personal statement is or may be sufficient just on its own to make the case for a mental health condition that mitigates or excuses conduct that led to an unfavorable bad paper discharge. Next. How long are they taking? A long time, especially with COVID, but even before COVID. There have been 2 class actions that have been filed. The Army just settled one because they're not meeting their required timeframes within which to resolve applications. So the BCNR, BCMRs have an obligation to resolve 90% within 10 months and 100% within 18 months. And they're failing. And the discharge review boards are at least 12 to 18 months currently, although they are processing them, they're back to work. So next slide. And that's really, there's your DD-214 sample, and you all probably know what those look like. You can, all the boxes at the bottom, special additional information, type of separation, character of service, separation authority, separation code, reentry code, and narrative reason for separation, all can be adjusted at least at the BCMR level. You can't, the reentry code discharge review board doesn't have the actually, I'm not sure. Maybe you can ask. We always ask anyway. They can only tell us no. But it's important to ask for all the relief that you want and not just ask for the character of service to be changed. You want to ask for the separation code and the narrative reason to be changed. We typically ask for that to say secretarial authority and the separation code of JFF, which equates to secretarial authority. So that's it. I think we're well over time for this presentation. I hope the information was somewhat helpful. There are lots of resources, as I said, and we hope that this has been a helpful presentation.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Doug. Appreciate that. Lots of information for you guys. Right now, we're actually going to go to our questions and answers time, and I'm going to put this up. This is all of our contact information for those that spoke today, and I'm going to pass it on to Jen, who was handling the questions as they were coming in. So go ahead, Jen.
Okay, we have a few different questions here. I'm going to start off with Holly's questions. Holly, I did send these to you in the chat. Maybe you see them. Are you there, Holly?
Yes, I am. Let me see.
Great. So that first question we have says, had an admin separation at 17 years, 10 months. So I lost my retirement. I have a general under honorable conditions. Can I upgrade, grant me my retirement paycheck back? I'm sorry, I read that a little wrong. Sorry.
No, you're fine. My understanding, and Doug, please correct me if I'm wrong, because we don't typically handle cases in which, our veterans are asking for relief, in the form of like a retirement check. But the Board for Corrections of Military or Naval Records can really only change that paperwork in the military record. I think in order to get retirement benefits, that might be a separate process. Doug, is that your understanding?
So the Board for Correction of Military Records or Naval Records it depends if you should have had a medical disability retirement. You can fight that down that path. It's really kind of distinct from a discharge upgrade, but it is within the power of the boards to take a look at that. It is a really tough fight. And the question of money, there's timelines that are 6 years from discharge, but there's also timelines that run from 6 years from an error. So it gets into an area that's well beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. But if you have a strong case for potentially a medical disability retirement, I would recommend that you reach out to, if you're in our service area, you could do an online application to us, but I would recommend that you reach out to NVLSP. They are actually looking at that area of retirement, medical disability retirement and entitlements, because there's a lot of, it's something that's a big deal that instead of referring a broken soldier into the medical disability, the disability evaluation system, they find a reason to separate the service member for administrative reasons, and makes the commander's numbers look better, and you're getting rid of somebody who isn't deployable. It's not okay, and NVLSP they're the powerhouse. So I'm happy to answer offline a little further, but it's a tough road. So.
Thank you so much, Doug. One quick question that I want to just pop in here really quick because it's an easy one to answer. Can we have copies of the PowerPoint? So yes, I have been putting in the chat the copies of the PowerPoint, but also it'll be available on our website under archives, the archives for our Zoom meetings, and that should be available up in 3 business days. And again, I'll put that also in our chat. Let's move on to another question here. I'm sorry. Are you aware of the old SPIN codes that were embedded in the DD Form 214s? Anybody can answer that?
Yes. And you can Google and find them and find the explanations of what they relate to. And some of them are, innocuous and directly, basically are a code for exactly what the narrative reason is, and some of them are not good. They're, they say something basically different. Who really understands what they mean and how bad they are, for a veteran? They've changed the spin codes a number of times, so it's not. It's something to pay attention to and something to ask for relief as to if you're doing a discharge upgrade. And if the question is more specific than that, you can follow up afterwards. Happy to help.
Thank you. This next one says, is there a VLI in the San Bernardino County area yet?
We do not have an office there. We were doing monthly in-person clinics at the San Bernardino VSO. We are doing them through sign-ups at the San Bernardino VSO virtually on a monthly basis. And if I remember correctly, it's like the third week of the month, but you need to apply like 10 days ahead or something like that. We try to organize it so that there's a little prep work that can be done in advance of it.
Okay.
So we're there, and we will be back to in-person once, all the pandemic stuff is over, but for the foreseeable future, we're doing it virtually, and we do not have a physical location there.
Where to get services in Modesto, California for help for discharge upgrades to try to get medical retirement when units never sent veterans to medical boards?
I don't have any resources in Modesto. There should be a county VSO. American Legion, VFW. They're good resources. I don't know if Calvet has any suggestions or resources or sources of Plowshares.
Yeah, I think we would have mentioned the same thing. We'll definitely talk with your local county veteran service office. If anything, they could help you out with the process, or if they know anything within the region. Actually, you may also want to check with your link, depending on where you are in California. In your email that was sent out yesterday and this morning, there is a link map. So depending on where you're at in California, I would definitely reach out to those individuals. And they might know of some resources more locally.
So
I also say that maybe if you're looking for medical disability retirement, as I said to on the prior question, National Veterans Legal Services Program, you can do info at and ask them for some information, because they do have national reach. And if you've got an issue that is in their wheelhouse, they're not geographically limited.
thank you. Here's a question. It says, I didn't know that you can change the characterization of your discharge for benefits purposes. I had an entry-level discharge after only serving a little more than 4 months. My discharge is uncharacterized. Would I be eligible for benefits other than education?
So for uncharacterized discharges, you can go through that character of discharge determination process. Specifically for like service-connected disability compensation, benefits like that. Different VA benefits have different length of service requirements. However, if you were injured during those 4 months and that condition persists today, then I would highly suggest going through that character of discharge determination process and pursuing VA disability benefits, service-connected disability benefits. But I do know that, like for VA healthcare, they might give priority based on length of service, or have eligibility requirements based on length of service.
Thank you, Holly. This one says, I probably don't qualify for low income help and live in Pomona, California, LA County. Are there attorneys to help with discharge upgrades longer than 15 years?
Yes. You probably want one step more than that. Yes, I believe Public Counsel has a veterans there in LA downtown. They, I would check, and the LAFLA LA legal aid is also a good resource. I believe they both have they both have veterans arms. If you want to send me if you want to email me after this, I'll turn around and send you the contact information for those two. I'll double check to make sure that they're folks that we put folks in contact with in LA. Yeah, and we do only do we're low income or over 65. We may be, this is just breaking news, is that we may be opening an office in LA. So that's that is not yet there, but we are hoping to be in LA. So you might be in our service area. Depends on the income qualification and or being over 65. So
Thank you. So here's another one. It says, I have a BCD, bad conduct discharge from 1991 Air Force Court. I'm sorry, it's moving as we're going. You guys are asking a lot of good questions. Air Force Court Martial, but I have discovered just recently that my re-entry code, I can re-enlist to another branch of service. I have mental health issues from the POW training I received, which led up to my CM for use of marijuana to cope with my issues. But I do have one honorable discharge I would like to upgrade, or dishonorable discharge. Honorable discharge I want to upgrade. I do have one honorable. That kind of, they must have meant dishonorable discharge. I would like to upgrade because honorable. Can't get better than honorable, right? Can anybody answer that?
So it sounds like this is pretty fact specific, but you were discharged in the 90s, which means you would go to the Board for Corrections of Military Records and ask for that upgrade from bad conduct discharge. If you used marijuana, I'm not sure what your court martial was, whether it was general or special. General would typically be for felony offenses and more serious misconduct, and then special court martial would be for more like minor offenses. But regardless, I think you're looking at a clemency argument. If you were court-martialed typically and received a punitive discharge. But yeah, that sounds like a very fact-specific case. And I would suggest reaching out to an advocate to assist with that, or looking through the self-help guide. I don't know if Doug has any other input.
yeah, depending on how long ago it was. I did not mention the Wilkie memorandum, but there's a whole thing in there about if it's been long enough that you've been under had the stigma attached or the bad paper, and you've otherwise lived a good life, and you made this one mistake, and it's been a long time ago. And then it even goes into, and so does the CURTA memo, about how societal views have changed. Specifically, the specific example that is used is marijuana use, and how it's much less considered a bad thing in society, and therefore you can use that too for your equity arguments. So you could go to I think you said Air Force, so it would be Air Force Board for Correction of Military Records, and use all of that. And it would be an equity or clemency argument. So Holly's absolutely right.
Is it possible to be reinstated to active duty after being separated at 18 years through the BCNR?
I know that if you're successful to change your reentry code, but I don't think that I'll let Doug handle the actual reinstatement part. But I will say that as far as chances of success of changing a reentry code, we talked a little bit about the presumption of government regularity, and there's a lot. I would say that it's more difficult to change a reentry code than it is to change your character of discharge characterization or narrative reason for separation. So that would be an uphill battle. Not impossible necessarily to change a reentry code, but just so you're aware.
Can I hear the question one more time? Because there's part that I wasn't sure I understood.
Let me see if I can find it again. I'm sorry. There's quite a few questions. I'm just scrolling up. Is it possible to be reinstated to active duty after being separated at 18 years through the B, C, and R? Is that the one that we just did?
Yes. So, I mean, if you're, I'm a little unclear on the question, because if you're saying, can I actually be reinstated to duty? Theoretically, the board could probably, I don't know if that's, I don't even know if they have the power to do that, but they can change your record. So we've been successful in getting rank restoration. We've been successful. You'd really have to have something that showed real error and overcoming the burden that Holly is pointing out. And I think when it comes to action, I don't know that you're ever going to get there from here on reinstatement to active duty. When you say after 18 years, if you had 18 years of service and it happened and you were separated last week, there might be some military command remedies you could go through, or you could even, and you might even be able to go to the board and try to get orders. There's nothing lost in trying, but it's not going to be done on the basis of, injustice or, the kind of equitable considerations, the fairness considerations. You'd have to really show that they did something wrong in order to get orders changed. And I don't think you'd at least have to have gone back to the command and shown that they made errors to exhaust your remedies that way. So yeah, that's a really tough road to hoe. And again, if you want to push it, I would say get thoughtful consultation from somebody, either your a VSO in your area, or go to NVLSP and their info and ask for some input. So sorry for the long-winded answer. It's sometimes it's getting the question right,
These are definitely some tricky questions, and definitely we could go for hours on this. There's lots of different situations, a lot of different, things going on. So, in different ways to get help. So it can be difficult. The next question is going to be an easy one. Is the Veterans Legal Institute nationwide?
Unfortunately, no. We serve our geographic area, which is Orange County, San Bernardino County, and Riverside County, California, and soon hopefully LA, and if the big vision might be San Diego. And while we advocate beyond those boundaries, that's who we can serve. We are really a small nonprofit law firm, and we try to pack a punch above our weight class, but unfortunately we can't serve everybody. We serve one veteran at a time, as many veterans as we can.
Thank you. So this question is, how do I get my 0% disability raised? You can do that by reapplying for your disability. To get assistance with that, we recommend that you go to your local county veteran service office. I'm going to leave a link for that to find out where the closest one to you is. Now, just so you guys know, you do not have to use a specific county office. If you want to use a different office, that's totally fine. If you work in a different area or if you live in a different area, whatever the case may be, you can go to any county office to get assistance. But these guys are accredited to do those claims and look deeper into your records to get the best disability or get the most disability rating that you deserve. There are no, so here's another question. There are no longer promulgating those updates, so treat with caution. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read through all these messages. That one is just somebody is, let me see if there's anything else here, you guys. I was administratively separated from the Navy. The board voted to retain. The JAG requested via the Department of Navy for me to be separated. What subject would I claim relief under to upgrade from general honorable conditions to honorable? So I think this is kind of just starting to get into those places where they need to ask these questions, you know, to find a representative and ask them those questions. We can't really get into specifics like that. We can't be giving legal advice on here unless there's something that advice that you guys can give.
I hate giving this this advice because it's such like a cliche within the legal services and legal field, but the it depends answer is really accurate for a lot of these questions because they are fact specific. And so, yeah, like you said, you know, with specific questions about these are my circumstances, not only is it hard to understand everything through a quick synopsis of your entire military career, but your records and what the boards are going to look at are your military records. Those records might reflect or might have missing information in them as opposed to what actually happened in the circumstances that you're describing. And so a thorough, you know, usually our intake interviews where I would provide that type of advice would take at least an hour of interviewing and looking through the records and things like that. So I would highly suggest, you know, reaching out to an advocate or looking through the self-help guides first to get like a basic understanding and then pursuing some advice.
Thank you so much, Holly. And in the chat, I just put in all those different links that you gave us to get assistance so they can find assistance in their area and such. And also those self-help guides also. And then I will, in addition, I will put in that the CalVet's website with the bad paperwork, fixed bad paperwork lesson on there. With that, I think we're pretty much done, Michael. I'm sorry. One other thing, we value so much you guys' feedback. We want these webinars to be as beneficial as possible. So I'm going to send out in the chat, and also it'll be sent out through email, the survey. We value your all your feedback, and we intend on implementing any type of corrections to make this any better for you guys. So, all right, go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Jen. All right, so we're going to close it out. Before we close it out, these are some upcoming webinars that are coming up. Some of them take place at schools, like the UC Riverside one. You don't have to be a student to attend. Feel free to just register on our event page. And with that being said, we're going to close it out. Thanks for hanging with us. Lots of good questions, lots of good information. If you have any questions for us, feel free to give us a call or email. That's it. Everybody have a good day. Thanks, guys.